Hi everyone, welcome back to lesson 11. So this is my 11th story for you and the fourth out of 5 Three Pigs stories. So I don't know if you can hear that. My dogs decided they couldn't leave me alone, so they have since joined me out here in this sunroom. Just had to make sure I was supervised, I guess, but they are fast asleep, so you might hear some snoring in the background. So we are going to read the fourth Three Little Pig story today. But before we start that, we start as always by activating our prior knowledge and thinking about genre. So take a moment, pause the video, and tell somebody with you about the story from yesterday. What happened and how did the author change the original story? So hopefully by now you have talked about it, you have paused the video, and now you have come back. A lot of things changed in this story. We're going to read a new one today. This one is called The Three Little Wolves and the Big Bad Pig by Eugene Trivizas. Did I have that right? Trivizas, yes. All right. So thinking about what we've already read, thinking about what you've seen and what you know of the story, take time to predict what might happen in this story. How might this author adapt the story we all know? So please pause the video if you're continuing to talk. Normally in my classroom, I'd be hearing from kids, getting their predictions, because the more we can predict and then confirm or disconfirm our thoughts, it makes us better thinkers. So I know a lot of times this really throws kids. Big Bad Pig really makes them question, but this is a real fun one because the author makes a lot of changes. So I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So just a reminder, we are going to be using this graphic again. You are going to be writing down, once we're done, how the author used those elements in the story. So here we go, The Three Little Wolves and the Big Bad Pig. No, wrong side. The Three Little Wolves and the Big Bad Pig. Once upon a time, actually you're going to need to be closer, aren't you? Here we go. Once upon a time, there were 3 cuddly little wolves with soft fur and fluffy tails who lived with their mother. The first was black, the second was gray, and the third was white. One day, the mother called the 3 little wolves around her and said, "My children, it is time for you to go into the world. Go and build a house for yourselves, but beware of the big bad wolf. Sorry, the big bad pig. Don't worry, mother, we will watch out for him." And the 3 wolves, "Don't worry, mother, we will watch out for him," said the 3 wolves, and they set off. Soon they met a kangaroo who was pushing a wheelbarrow full of red and yellow bricks. "Please, will you give us some of your bricks?" asked the 3 little wolves. "Certainly," said the kangaroo, and she gave them lots of red and yellow bricks. So the 3 little wolves built themselves a house of bricks. So, just to get you thinking, pause here and think about already, even in just the first couple of pages, already there have been changes. Turn and talk together about what has the author changed. Pause here. So hopefully now you've talked together, you've noticed some things. I hope you paused and talked about it because I'm going to give some answers and I don't want to spoil it for you. So already, hopefully you've noticed that they've switched the characters. Instead of being a big bad wolf, it's a big bad pig. They flip-flopped. Another thing you might notice is right off the bat, what are they building with this first house? Instead of straw, they're using bricks. So I don't know about you, but I remember when I first read this, I started to wonder, okay, if they're starting with bricks, what on earth could they use next if that house gets knocked down? Then there's one more subtle thing, which I'm hoping you noticed, but maybe you didn't. So far, this is the only story where the three brothers or sisters work together to build their house, instead of one building a house out of this, another building a house out of that. The three of them work together to build one house out of bricks. So that's kind of a neat, interesting change. Let's see what happens next. The very next day, the big bad pig came prowling down the road and saw the house of bricks that the pigs had... I'm getting a mouthful here, I'm sorry. The very next day, the big bad pig came prowling down the road and saw the house of bricks that the little wolves had built. The three little wolves were playing croquet in the garden. When they saw the big bad pig coming, they ran inside the house and locked the door. The pig knocked on the door and grunted, little wolves, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the three little wolves. "By all the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in, not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but the house didn't fall down. So we're going to pause here to think and talk. So two big questions to talk about together. What has the author changed? How is this different? And then the second thing, after you've finished talking about that, is to talk about, okay, since the pig can't knock down this house, what might happen next? So please pause, discuss, and then come back. So hopefully you have discussed that. It's so important to stop and think and share your ideas in the middle of a book. Unfortunately, I'm not there to hear your thoughts. I wish I could be, but you might have some cool predictions about what might happen next, and let's read and see if you're right. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but the house didn't fall down. But the pig wasn't called big and bad for nothing. He went and fetched his sledgehammer, and he knocked the house down. The three little wolves only just managed to escape before the house crumbled, and they were very frightened indeed. That is certainly different. So now this is where we're going to find out if they started off with a super strong material like bricks, what on earth could they use next? So let's see. "We shall have to build a stronger house," they said. Just then they saw a beaver who was mixing concrete in a concrete mixer. "Please, will you give us some of your concrete?" asked the three little wolves. "Certainly," said the beaver. And he gave them buckets and buckets full of messy, slurry concrete. So the three little wolves built themselves a house of concrete. So in case you're not sure, concrete is the same as pavement or cement. So it's basically that hard stuff that we make sidewalks out of. No sooner had they finished than the big bad pig came prowling down the road and saw the house of concrete that the wolves had built. They were playing battledore and shuttlecock in the garden, and when they saw the big bad pig coming, they ran inside their house and shut the door. The pig rang the bell and said, "Little frightened wolves, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the three little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in, not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. So he huffed and he puffed and he puffed and he huffed, but the house didn't fall down. Now the last time the pig couldn't blow the house down, he went and got a sledgehammer. Do you think the sledgehammer would be a good tool to use here? Maybe, maybe not. Let's see if he tries the sledgehammer again. But the pig wasn't called big and bad for nothing. He went and fetched his pneumatic drill and smashed the house down. The three little wolves managed to escape, but their chinny chin chins were trembling and trembling and trembling. What do you think that means? Their chins were trembling. Yeah, it means they were feeling kind of nervous or worried, scared. So, the first house was made out of bricks. He broke it down with a sledgehammer. The second house was made out of cement or concrete. He broke that down with a pneumatic drill. What on earth could be next? Talk about that. Pause the video, talk about that. What on earth could they do? So hopefully you've talked about that together and you're coming back. Let's see what their third house will be made out of. We shall build an even stronger house, they said, because they were determined. Just then they saw a truck coming along the road carrying barbed wire, iron bars, armor plates, and heavy metal padlocks. Please, will you give us some of your barbed wire, a few iron bars and armor plates, and some heavy metal padlocks? They said to the rhinoceros who was driving the truck. Sure, said the rhinoceros, and he gave them plenty of barbed wire, iron bars, armor plates, and heavy metal padlocks. He also gave them some plexiglass, which is basically, it looks like glass, but you can't break it. He gave them some plexiglass and some reinforced steel chains because he was a generous and kind-hearted rhinoceros. So the three little wolves built themselves an extremely strong house. It was the strongest, securest house one could possibly imagine. They felt absolutely safe. I don't know about you, but my mind is certainly starting to wonder what on earth could happen next. Will the pig be able to break it down? Will he leave them alone? What will the ending be like? Because that's one of our elements, right? The ending of the story. Let's see. The next day, the big bad pig came prowling along the road as usual. The three little wolves were playing hopscotch in the garden. When they saw the big bad pig coming, they ran inside their house, bolted the door, locked all 37 padlocks. The pig dialed the video entrance phone and said, "Little frightened wolves with the trembling chins, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in. Not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." "Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. So he huffed, and he puffed, and he puffed, and he huffed. But the house didn't fall down. But the pig wasn't called big and bad for nothing. He brought some dynamite and laid it against the house, lit the fuse, and the house blew up. The three little wolves just managed to escape with their fluffy tails scorched. This is quite a silly story, right? This is how you can tell this is that fiction, the type of story that's fantasy. It's way beyond possible. There's no way this would ever really happen, right? You have talking animals, you have explosions, right? This is all just silly, dramatic story from somebody's imagination to be fun to read. Something must be wrong with our building materials, they said. So what on earth are they going to do now? They've already built bricks, cement, and steel. What could they do that would be stronger than that? Something must be wrong with our building materials, they said. We have to try something different. But what? At just that moment, they saw a flamingo coming down the road, pushing a wheelbarrow full of flowers. "Please, will you give us some flowers?" asked the little wolves. "With pleasure," said the flamingo, and he gave them lots of flowers. So the three little wolves built themselves a house of flowers. I don't know how they could expect that to stop the pig. He's got sledgehammers and pneumatic drills. He could break through that in a second. One wall was of marigolds, one of daffodils, one of pink roses, and one of cherry blossoms. The ceiling was made of sunflowers, and the floor was a carpet of daisies. They had water lilies in their bathtub and buttercups in the refrigerator. It was a rather fragile house, so that means like it could break easily, and it swayed in the wind, but it was very beautiful. Next day, the big bad pig came prowling down the road and saw the house of flowers that the three little wolves had built. He rang the bluebell at the door and said, "Little frightened wolves with the trembling chins and scorched tails, let me come in." "No, no, no," said the three little wolves. "By the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in. Not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." "Then I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down," said the pig. Oh gosh, I'm nervous to see what happens. But as he took a deep breath, ready to huff and puff, he smelled the soft scent of the flowers. It was fantastic. And because the scent was so lovely, the pig took another breath and then another. Instead of huffing and puffing, he began to sniff. He sniffed deeper and deeper until he was quite filled with the fragrant scent. His heart grew tender, and he realized how horrible he had been. Right then, he decided to become the big, good pig, and he started to sing and dance the tarantella. At first, the three little wolves were a bit worried it might be a trick. But soon they realized that the pig truly had changed. So they came running out of the house. They started playing games with him. First they played pig in the middle. First they played pig pog, then piggy in the middle. And when they were all tired, they invited him into the house. They offered him tea and strawberries and wolfberries, and asked him to stay with them as long as he wanted. The pig accepted, and they all lived happily together ever after. What a story! Golly, so now your job together is to look at our chart and think about how has Eugene Trivizas altered the original story to make a new and unusual story for us to read. Think about how they changed the characters, the setting, materials, language, and ending. So remember, pause here, write that all down because I'm going to go over that and I want you to have that done before we look at it together. So pause here and write. So now you have hopefully written down your observations. Let's look at it together. So, characters. We talked about that already. They flipped those characters around. Three little wolves and a big bad pig. The setting. We didn't really notice much about the setting. Let's look back and see where we can find some clues with background. There's one clue. So far, some of the pages show kind of like a forest. Some of the pages show kind of like a field. So it seems pretty similar to the original story. So it seems like the forest or a field might be the setting. The materials. What were those three materials? The first one? Yep, it was bricks. The second one? That's that tricky word. Cement or concrete, right? And then the third one? They used steel. And then in this story, they built a fourth house. That fourth house was made out of flowers. Now the language. Did any language repeat in this one? Let's see. Oh, he does say, "I'll huff and I'll puff and I'll blow your house down." He does say, "Let me come in." And they do say, "No, no, no." Not, let's see, they say, wrong page. "No, no, no, by the hair on our chinny chin chins, we will not let you in. Not for all the tea leaves in our china teapot." So some of that language does repeat. Then the ending, dun, da, 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 very different. Tell me about it. What was that ending? Yeah, the pig smelled those flowers, was filled with wonder and decided to turn his life around and make some better choices, and they all lived together. So that was a really big change from the other versions that we've been reading. Great job. Now, the main thing I want you to do now, where I'm going to leave you, is to think about the versions we've read. Are there any common ideas through these books? So are there any books where you could say, oh, this was kind of similar? So we already have compared each one to the original. So really we're looking at these three versions. Are there any similarities in these three versions? So take a minute to think about that, if there's anything that's sort of the same. Pause here because I am going to show you one thing I want you to notice when you're done. So hopefully you took a moment to talk about my question, even if you couldn't find the answer, and that's okay. I asked you to think about, is there anything you noticed that was sort of the same about these stories? And there's one thing I do want you to notice that's sort of similar, which is basically between these two, there was a common thread that the author decided to not use those standard materials, the straw, bricks, sticks combination. So it's good to start noticing patterns in how authors use that story. We're going to read one more, and I'm going to ask you to do the same two things. So I'll ask you the same two questions. I'll ask you to think about using the chart, how is the author changing the story, and then I'll ask you to think about finding connections between the books, and then that will be the end of our mini unit on 3 Pigs. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.